All right, we on. Woo, we on. Okay. All right, we got 2:30. Everybody's got about 15 meetings going on today. I've got 3 this time, so I can only make one at a time. And I know people's got to leave. We got people that's emailed me saying they're in education and other places for our meeting, but we have a quorum here. Yes. Okay, we got a quorum, so we're going to move ahead. Let's have a word of prayer. Lord, we do thank you for this day. Thank you for the breath of life, the ability to take care of the work of the people of Georgia. Just grant us wisdom and your guidance in all that we do. Bless these that are met here today now. Go with us in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Representative Harrell, we're going to talk about House Bill 41. Have you got this perfected to everybody's satisfaction? Perfect. Is your mic on? Is there a little button in the back to make it green?
Is that better?
Ah,
cool.
There you go.
I talk pretty loud anyway. It's supported by Savannah College of Art and Design, who is prepared to begin offering the course first among our architecture schools and universities. It is also supported by Kennesaw State and Georgia Tech, which may at some point in the future decide to avail themselves of the program. We had testimony from professors and educators from those universities at the subcommittee hearings, and I would certainly be glad to answer questions of the committee at this time. But again, I think this is a good policy for Georgia. It's good for architecture students, good for our architecture schools, reduces the burdens of cost and time and speeds to market product that we desperately need in Georgia, professional architects. I'll yield for questions.
All right, looks like you've got one, sir. Yes, sir.
We on?
Try it.
There it is.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. Your comment about 55% of the architects are coming from outside of the state. Are we still doing something more onerous to our students than they are elsewhere, or why is that happening?
They are licensed to practice, obviously, in Georgia, and I think my understanding is across the country, we have kind of leveled off with the number of practitioners in this area. Mm-hmm. So as the economy has turned back around and it's picking back up, the demand has increased, and so they're going where the work is, obviously. But that's my understanding. I can't explain it further.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from committee members? I understand. All right, Chairman Welch.
Just have a motion when you're ready.
Okay, sir. I understand this was heard in subcommittee, I think, twice, and had a few changes on it. Any other questions? If not, we'll entertain motion.
Move to pass.
Got to move? Got to move in second. No further questions? All in favor, let it know by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, my friend.
Thank
We'll
y'all
get you
very
in the
much.
rules.
Appreciate it. And
Thank you,
so
sir.
excuse me, I'm going to miss the rest of your meeting today. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Vice. Mm-hmm. We're not gonna call for a, what we call it, a recall on that thing, reconsideration. We're not gonna reconsider, are we? We won't do that to him. All right, we got up next, House Bill 239. Representative Hawkins, you wanna come up and talk to us? Woo!
I'll make this quick. I'm looking at a very intelligent group of faces here today, and this is the same bill, word for word, we had last year. You know, last year I really didn't say much back to folks that made some incorrect statements. Like, if I'm a wire puller, I don't need to have education. If you're a wire puller, you don't have a license. This bill's about licensing. Those that are licensed, low voltage providers, will require 4 CEUs every year. That's not a whole lot. And some people say, well, why do they need it? Well, your cousin Benny doesn't need it when he puts it in your house because he's not licensed, but he can still put it in your house. You can put your own in. But when we had ours done, we had someone that was licensed because I got 7 kids and I'm not going to have a house burned down and the alarms not go off because they weren't installed correctly and they didn't connect to the fire department. We have schools, we've got colleges, and we got these buildings that were fire alarmed and all the other alarms you can put in by licensed people. This industry is changing, and we can stay the way we were, or we can get better. And the way to get better is to know what you're doing, and that requires education. I find it surprising sometimes that some of our colleagues are not in favor of education. That sort of surprises me. But, you know, we all have our own opinions, and that's okay. Let me just say that the ESA, Electronic Security Association, which is the largest trade association in the U.S. representing large and small businesses, professionally install and monitor electronic savings and security systems, represents 400,000 people, and they service 30 million residential and commercial clients in the U.S. ESA supports CE for their members who enter the homes and businesses of Americans and to support the education that does provide the industry standards promulgated by the National Electronic Code and the National Fire Protection Association. As you heard last year, we've had the Police Chiefs Associations support this bill. Fire departments, you're going to hear, if you want, we've got someone from the fire services here. You've got members of their associations here. I think I'll probably hush up and see if there's any questions for me, and then you can listen to them.
All right, well, you have lit up the board again. Well, now, number 17?
Uh-oh, he's just getting back at me for those amendments last year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, this is it's deja vu. We've heard this bill before, and it looks like it's in the same form that it passed this committee last year.
Yes, sir.
Did this bill pass the House?
No, sir. We lost it by 2 votes. I did ask for reconsideration, but not bring it again because I felt like I needed to get this industry to start contacting legislators and get some of this misinformation corrected. And this industry is a hard-working industry, but they're not organized legislatively. And a lot of industries aren't. I mean, it's not their fault. Their folks are out there working every day. And so when that didn't come about, I said, hey, you guys step back, you talk to some of these legislators, we'll do it again next year. So I did.
Okay.
I mean, I want my colleagues to hear the truth. And when you're making decisions based on what's best for the citizens of Georgia. I really do. That's the way I treat my dental patients. So I'm not going to rush anything over you. I want you to hear these things. And if you agree, great. And if you don't, it's okay. But at least you got the information to make a good decision.
All right, Chairman Kirby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your 4-hour CEU. I don't think anybody's against education. We want people that are licensed to know what they're doing. But too many of these CEUs in this state and around the country, you know, it's a seminar you go to, you get 2 hours of credit or 4 hours of credit. You know, you have a good time at some travel location you went to. There's nothing in here that tells me that the CEUs that you're acquiring are actually going to better your knowledge. It could be nothing but review of stuff you've been doing for years.
You know, we have state boards for that, and those board members are appointed by the governor, and their charge is the protection of the citizens of Georgia, and all these boards. So that board will eventually make the decisions, and they have the right in the bill to go ahead and pass those courses. So you make a valid point, but I don't think we can legislate everything, and I think that is the reason we have the boards. It's not a bad point, but,
Does,
you know,
follow up, Mr. Chairman? Does the board not have the ability to put in some regulations or rules on their own without legislating this?
yes, they can do it by rule. Our board does that. Sure can. They do a 30-day notice and they put a rule in. That's what boards do, state boards.
Why wouldn't they do that in this case then?
They said that they contacted legislative council and their own attorneys, and they felt like they could not instigate a CE rule without a change or without legislative correction. It was the same thing for the Dental Association. We had to do this about 1992, 93. I was actually legislative chairman when we did this. We had to do it legislatively also. And I will tell you, not all dentists agreed with it. I got calls at 11 o'clock at night. Usually it's sort of hard to understand them at a bar somewhere saying, I don't need to know anymore. Yeah, so you got a few of those in every profession, unfortunately.
You good, Representative? Mr. Chairman? Okay. Chairman Martin?
Representative Hawkins, I think I was one of your red votes last year, and I'm hard pressed to change my mind. Again, I'm at the same place. I can do this in my house,
Right, you can.
okay? But if somebody wants to do it for a living, I feel like I somehow am blessed that being 180 members. I need to tell them what they need to do.
I'm sorry.
I just have an issue. If you're telling me it's dangerous for this to be done, then there ought to be a law against me being able to do it in my own house.
No,
If
what
it's
I'm
not dangerous for me to be done, is it not true? Then we're just injecting our opinion in to tell somebody that they need to do this. And furthermore, it reads, as it does in some other code here, of not more than 4. So if it's so important that they get this education, why don't we mandate them to have 4? You say not more than 4, which means they could have none.
let me answer your first question. Why is it so necessary? You know, if you want Cousin Billy to do it, it's free world. You can do it. You can do it yourself. You're right. But for the people who are looking for a system that they can rely on, they'll go looking for a licensed low voltage person, a contractor, and with that, you would expect that somebody in that company is going to know what's going on and come inspect the job. Not everybody in that company is licensed. It may just only be the owner, and it may be the supervisor. Just like in the plumbing business, my father was a plumber. Not everybody out there was a licensed plumber, but there was somebody that looked over that job and guaranteed the job was done correctly, and that's the reason people hired us. You could get Uncle Billy go do your plumbing too. So this
Actually, you can't.
Huh?
Actually, you can't. There's building codes that require you to use a licensed plumber to do things to hook onto public facilities. So that's actually not true.
Well, but not all counties and municipalities actually send someone out to check the job. You're
Well,
right.
that's
A
a
lot
problem
of
with the county
a lot
and
of
the
municipalities
municipality.
have codes, but in reality, those codes aren't even enforced. So, you know.
I won't belabor the point. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. If it's important that they have 4, I don't understand why we don't mandate some. Because we're just telling them up to 4, they may have none.
Well, I think that would be up to the discretion of the licensing board at that point in time to determine how many they want to have.
I mean, the purpose of this is to have CEs, so.
And,
That's
you know,
good.
and once you get your house built and it's approved, you can go out and have anybody you want to come in and do work on your plumbing later on, like you said.
Okay.
Chairman Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment about the curriculum. The bill does specify that the courses and programs conducted by manufacturers to promote their products is not permitted. So in terms of regulating what those CLEs can be, the bill affirmatively states it cannot be used for manufacturers' promotional purposes. So inherently, that would mean that it'd have to be educational in nature and not for promoting those things. The other aspect of this that's I think is important to discuss is that your fire alarm systems and your security systems are low voltage systems. And it is necessary for those systems to function in order to protect both property, but more importantly, human health and life. So if those fail due to someone putting them in without a license, or someone putting them in without proper education and knowledge to do that, then you're risking residential and commercial facilities to being a place where they're just a fire trap. And I think that's an important consideration in why this bill is moving forward, why this bill has been presented to the committee.
All right. What's your number? 15. All right, Representative Rakestraw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think, the industry also covers home automation technology, and because that's such a rapidly changing industry and there's always updates, people need to stay abreast of those changes, because there are a lot of what they call trunk slammers out there in the industry that will come and take your money and leave you with a mess that someone else has to come in and straighten out. And so because it's becoming more and more technical with the automated home of the future, I think that this is a good requirement that there's some level of continuing education, so that people are continuing to show an investment in the industry and their knowledge, so that when someone hires someone, they're not just hiring somebody that, decided to hang out a shingle and say they can do something that they're not necessarily capable of handling.
Sounds like you have experience in this.
I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for the author at this time?
Would you like to hear from any of the folks that came, Mr. Chairman? That'd be up to y'all.
Yeah, let's hear from a couple of them. They've made their way here today, so if you don't mind, whoever wants to come first, Mr. Loud or Mr. Westbrook or whoever. Just state your name and who you're with, sir.
Excuse me, my name's Jay Westbrook. I'm with Cobb County Fire Marshal's Office. And what I'm here today to speak on is the fact that we've experienced, from the Fire Marshal's Office standpoint, some ramifications of people having a lack of training in the fire alarm industry. And what that results in is, one, people not knowing the code requirements that we're dealing with. Many of the contractors that we've dealt with have not even known the code that we deal with, which is NFPA 72, which is a different code, and then addresses the requirements for security systems. There's really two industries here that you're talking about, is security industry and the fire alarm industry.
Would you pull your mic up just a little bit closer so make sure we can everybody hear you, sir?
How about that?
That's great. Thank you, sir.
So it's dealing with a couple different aspects of the industry, and to address the limited education that many of the contractors that we deal with in Cobb County, we had a local ordinance that required a certification that in turn required CEUs at the local level. And the CEUs educate contractors on the new technology that's available and code changes that change from year to year, so that the problems that we have that may be causing false alarms or causing fire alarm systems not to work properly, they learn how to address that and eliminate those problems. So that's the aspect that we approached it from at a local level. This is much the same. It's moving in a similar direction. And we've seen contractors get more involved in education, and that has helped them. If you can think, what type of phone did you use 5 years ago? It probably flipped open. If 5 years ago somebody would have handed you a smartphone or an iPhone 6 and said, here, go to work with it, it would have taken you a while to figure it out. Well, that's what we have going on right now in the fire alarm industry, is we've got a lot of folks figuring it out. That's not what we want to be happening with our fire alarm systems in schools, in high-rise buildings, in our large assembly occupancies, churches. These are required life safety systems. This isn't the security system that tells you somebody's breaking in your house, although that's a part of it. But the part that we deal with are the life safety systems that are supposed to contact the fire department, get emergency forces moving, and tell you that there's a problem in the building so that you can start moving out when there's large crowds. Like I said, schools, daycares, assembly occupancies, movie theaters, things like that. So we addressed it locally. We see a change, and we're looking forward to how it's gonna improve the industry for our citizens in Cobb County. Thank you.
All right, would you take a question, sir?
Sure.
What's your number, sir? 16, okay.
Mr. Westbrook, how do you deal currently with false alarms on fire systems?
How do we deal with that?
Right. I mean, you get one a month from the same location, you get 6 a month from the same location.
Our ordinance currently allows you on the third one in a 12-month period. On the third one, then you are subject to fines on that third false alarm.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, Mr. Westbrook? Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Loud, you want to tell us who you are, sir?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come before you today. My name is John Loud. I'm president of Loud Security Systems. We're based in Cobb County also. I started my company back in 1995, and I was a flight attendant with Delta Airlines. And the unique part of that is I had never been in the alarm industry, didn't know how any of this stuff worked. And when I went and got my license, every 2 years now for the past 20 years, the only thing I'm required to do is pay the state of Georgia $75, and I get a renewed license. Now, I'm a unique individual because I believe a lot in R&D, and R&D for many people is research and development. Mine's about rip off and duplicate. So I spend a lot of time going to these State Alarm Association meetings, both statewide and nationally, to learn from each other and learn some of the product materials, the best practices. And to Mr. Westbrook's testimony, one of the things that I worked with Frank Rotundo and the Georgia Chiefs of Police Association in Cobb, we had a false alarm mess going on. So in 07 and 08, we worked together for 2 years, brought false alarms from 43,000 calls of service down to a little over 14,000 calls of service with an ordinance within Cobb. Now, you all passed about 2 years ago the enhanced call verification that came through here with Tom Taylor that the state of Georgia passed, which now is something for every jurisdiction to be able to enforce through the alarm industry, to be able to have 2 call required to be able to greatly reduce false alarms, which again comes back to taxpayer resources. I've explained many times, at the end of the day, I'm a taxpayer before I'm a business owner. My business can be gone tomorrow, but I'm really sitting here as a taxpayer to be able to share with you from the inside of the industry to see the waste that we cause at times upon the industries and the jurisdictions. When you look at what this is about in Chapter 14 of the Georgia Code, we're actually asking for nothing more than the equivalent language, verbatim, of what everybody else, there's 5 contractors within that code. There's utility, plumbers, HVAC, and electrical, and we're the 5th. And we're only asking for the exact same 4 CEUs, and I think if you read to the bottom of the bill, as Chairman suggested earlier, that it talks about the types of education that's even going to be allowed, recommended, or accepted from the board standpoint. It's not of sales nature, it's about education. And I think if alarm owners, both Berg and Fire, and the thing about our licensing for the state of Georgia is, as an unrestricted low voltage license holder, I have the ability to be able to do all sorts of low voltage. So there's 4 classifications in there. But even by going to this continuing education, I'm going to pick up information, and I need to mind you, I have 60 plus employees. I'm the license holder for my company. I have 2 other license holders. I don't need that, but I have 2 others within my company. So this bill only requires the license holder, me in my case, not my other 60 plus people, to take the time. So I want to share that we don't have an excessive burden on a small business, even if there's 2 or 3. And I also want to share with you here locally, manufacturers as well as trade associations will provide training absolutely for free. And they want you to come out so bad, they will truly pay for lunch, pay for dinner, and there's not a cost burden for me as an alarm low voltage holder to actually be able to get those CEUs, which then teach me better business practices, which ultimately in the net effect has a better consumer, no problem, a better consumer service, you know, for businesses. These are your constituents, and at the end of the day, it's about reduce tax burden, reduce wasted resources. Last thing, and I'll stop, is it comes down to me about jobs. You know, the analogy of what you guys got for testimony last year, Count Cooley was here last year to be able to testify, and today he had a conflict, but he serves on behalf of Governor Deal on the state low voltage board. And by us having members that are down in Columbus, Georgia, okay, when we've got all the other adjoining states that have CEUs, he can have people come from Alabama and do jobs in Georgia, but we can't go over there because of our licensing scenario. So we actually lose jobs to a budding state folks that have licensing and the low voltage aspect in that. And again, we have licensing to the core. We're only asking for the exact same language as each of the other contractors. And I certainly don't feel as a business it's a burden. I feel as a taxpayer it's a certain benefit to the end of that consumer, both business and residential.
All right, you got a question, sir? Representative Martin, Chairman Martin.
Just a question. I guess my deal with this is the government telling you to do it, because you said, I think you had 60 people. You have
Yes.
yourself and 2 other folks that are licensed, so that would be impacted by this.
Well, technically, no. As the license holder for my company, I'm the only person that actually
Okay,
has to
so
have
so
the 4
so only you
CEUs.
would be,
as
makes my point even further, though.
Okay.
If it is so necessary for this to be there, I'm gonna assume you're not gonna go on all the jobs your company's gonna do, so you're gonna have people doing those that don't have these courses. And I'm guessing that as the owner of that company, if you felt like they need them, you're gonna require them to have them to employ those people, right? In other words, but we don't require them here by the state, but if you want them to go and represent you and wear your logo on their shirt when they go out, if you think they need them, you'd require them to get them as a condition of employment. You may or may not pay for them or co-pay for them, right? I guess what just bothers me here is us feeling like we need to tell you to do that. I trust you to do the right thing, and trust the board to do that, and I'm fine with it doing it through rule and reg. So, and I'm fine with me as a consumer, asking about it or coming up with a certification. I won't belabor the point anymore, but I appreciate what you're saying. I do think some of the alarms, I was in local, government for a while. I mean, a lot of the alarms had nothing to do with the wiring. It was a loose connection between the box and the folks that lived in the home, and more so than it was the low voltage wiring with some of our fire alarms and so
Well,
forth.
in true
but-
fairness, it's a lot of times the end consumer and the education that's gone on. But in real fairness, there, you're right. As a company for Loud Security, sure. As the only license holder, so I think it's not an overly burdensome thing. As the leader of my company, I'm going to take the time to get the education and disseminate it through the people that I hire, train, and are going to qualify to stay within my business to deal with the customer service I want. And you're right. There's an aspect here now that comes on to the rest of my industry. Okay, so the consumers, your constituents that are out there that are receiving an inferior service or didn't get the training or didn't get the knowledge that they can get for free, right, to be able to pass that along to their customers still becomes a reflection on us. And I promise you, I don't mind sometimes truly from a business perspective when those companies mangle a customer, because guess who gets to get them? So I'll be selfish. I get to go pick those up, and I get to earn their business and trust for years to come. But at the same time, it's still a scar against our industry that we've not respectfully gone and trained and teach these folks to do well, so that we don't even have that part. So the factor of it not being something that matches the rest of all of the others, to even have a 4 CEU simple education, I think as a taxpayer, we miss out on that benefit to actually reduce the false alarms and have better quality of service.
Anything else, Chairman? I'm a small business owner. I got 7 people that work for me, and I know my company, they don't call all 7 of us in usually when they're telling us what's going to be changing, and it's a continual change in the insurance industry too. But I'm the one responsible to go and figure out what they're telling us to do next, and I have to come back and make sure my employees are following what my company said I got to do to take care of our clients, customers out here. So yeah, and then when there's a problem, they're gonna call me.
In
Yeah, something goes
Alabama,
wrong.
the sales reps, the office staff, every single person is required to go through CEUs, and, and it's overburdensome.
That was one quick question. You talk about losing money to Alabama or somewhere now. Is that because of reciprocal agreements? Our guys, because we don't have the license requirement in the state, Alabama won't recognize Georgia's license, but Georgia will recognize Alabama's license if they want to come over here and do a job for us.
So that is part of the discussion. It's not something I could say if we have CEUs, we're going to certainly get the reciprocal agreement. But it's been a discussed item to say, because you guys don't even have training the caliber of your technicians and so forth. And
So our people couldn't go to Alabama and get licensed necessarily if they
Correct.
wanted to go over there and work,
And
because they don't have the CEs. Is that
Correct.
right?
And I will share this with you. Years ago, I went through all the Alabama certifications. I did all the testing, and I actually chose to not renew it because it was so burdensome and costly. I said, you know what? I'd rather not do business over there. There's enough good opportunity here in Georgia. We do have an operation in Jacksonville, Florida, so we do follow the Georgia code and law from licensing down there.
All right, they're dropping like flies. I better hurry up here. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a licensed real estate broker, and the older I get, the more the more I see the benefit and the necessity to C&E. I see real estate brokers and sales agents all the time that they forget some of the smaller things that they should always remember. There's a reason that we regulate certain industries. It's for the safety and the protection of the consumer. There's nothing wrong with continuing education. And that being said, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion before you lose the rest of this committee.
I started to say that, yeah, they're pretty much going. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Loud. Appreciate you being here. All right, we're gonna, open it at this time for a motion, sir.
At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion to do pass.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor, let them say an aye. Aye. Any opposed, like, nay? All right, it's passed. Appreciate the committee being here. Thank you all for being here. And we're adjourned, and we'll see y'all next Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock.